Elon Musk is facing a mammoth of a challenge right now, and it's not about his car's batteries catching fire. It's from a company in China that used to make batteries for phones, but has now become a huge name in electric vehicles. This company, BYD, has turned into a powerhouse in the EV world and is giving Tesla a run for its money. In fact, BYD has even outpaced Tesla in the last part of the previous year, becoming the #1 seller of EVs. That's right, they've managed to sell more electric cars than Tesla, which is a pretty big deal. So how did this happen? Let's take a look on how BYD climbed to the top and what this means for the future of electric cars. BYD CEO Wang Chuanfu had a vision, and it caught the eye of some big-time investors, including Warren Buffett. The investment legend saw something special in BYD and decided to back them up. This wasn't just about cars, though. BYD wasn't afraid to try new things, getting into making solar cells and even assembling cell phones. They were all in on pushing for a more sustainable future. BYD Auto, which is the car-making arm of the company, bought another car company in 2003, and by 2005, rolled out their first car, the BYD F3. They kept the momentum going, launching their first plug-in hybrid in 2008 and then their first all-electric car, the BYD E6, in 2009. Fast forward to 2022 and they've said goodbye to gas-only cars to focus entirely on electric and new energy vehicles. They're selling these cars under a few fancy brand names, and they're not just sticking to China. They're hitting up markets all over the world. Now, from 2020 to 2023, BYD's car sales went through the roof. In 2023 alone, they sold over 3 million units. That's 7 times more than in 2020, when they sold around 427,000 cars. And with those numbers, they've zoomed past Tesla in the race, selling more electric vehicles in the last quarter of 2023. BYD sold a whopping 526,000 battery-only cars around the world, outdoing the American big shot, Tesla, which sold 484,500 cars. Tesla sold more cars over the whole year, but this quarter was a game changer because it was the first time BYD got ahead. And guess what? BYD made it into the global top 10 car sales for the first time by the end of 2023. That's huge. Now you might be wondering, how did BYD pull this off? Well, it's all about being smart with their moves. BYD didn't just focus on cars. They played the long game, making strategic investments and diversifying their business. They started out supplying batteries to big names like Apple, which is no small feat. It taught them how to be tough and resilient. BYD also took a chance on a struggling local car brand in China, turning it around with their battery tech expertise. They didn't stop there. They kept pushing the envelope, improving their cars inside and out. Most people didn't see it coming, but all this groundwork laid over 15-20 years was setting BYD up for a massive win. And a major part in its success, BYD didn't just dive headfirst into all-electric vehicles. They knew the game needed a mix, so they kept making hybrid cars, which was a smart move. According to an analyst, this strategy was golden. When the electric vehicle scene in China was just warming up and not many places had charging stations, BYD played it smart. They launched both all-electric and plug-in hybrid cars, catering to customers who were still on the fence about going all-electric. These plug-in hybrids were easier on the wallet and didn't leave drivers worrying about running out of charge on long trips. This approach helped BYD get a solid footing in the market when it was still finding its feet. And then there's the clever way BYD positioned itself in the market. They didn't just aim for the top end or the bottom. They found their sweet spot in the middle, where there wasn't as much competition. BYD's knack for branding was on point too. They introduced different sub-brands for different price ranges, like the Denza brand for those looking for something a bit fancier but not too pricey. This story isn't just about BYD being super smart and strategic on their own. They've had a pretty hefty cheerleader backing them up, the Chinese government. Beijing has been throwing its weight behind the EV market big time, and BYD has been riding that wave. Since around 2009, right when BYD was getting serious about pushing their EVs, the Chinese government started rolling out the red carpet for electric cars. We're talking about subsidies, which is basically like giving buyers a discount to make electric cars more appealing. Plus, the industry got a lot of support from the state. Between 2015 and 2020, BYD itself bagged around $4.3 billion in state support. That's a whole lot of backup. This kind of support from Beijing wasn't just a pat on the back, it was a game changer. It meant BYD could get its hands on money cheaper than most, both in terms of investments and loans. This made it way easier for them to pump up their production levels and dive deep into research and development without sweating too much about the costs. Moving forward, after pretty much owning the EV market in China, BYD is now stretching its wings far and wide, all the way from the sandy sandy dunes of the United Arab Emirates to the bustling streets of Thailand, and even over to the United Kingdom. In Southeast Asia, they have a whopping 43% market share of the electric vehicle market. But BYD's not stopping at just selling cars overseas. They're thinking bigger, like setting up shop for making cars and even getting into the business of materials. Even in last December, BYD announced plans to open their first European manufacturing plant in Hungary. And they're not just stopping with factories. They've got their eyes on lithium mining assets in Brazil too. Why lithium, you ask? Well, it's a super important ingredient in their batteries, kind of like the secret sauce that powers all those EVs. Now, due to all this, some governments are a bit wary, especially because of the hefty subsidies Chinese car makers, including BYD, have received back home. It's like those subsidies are giving them a turbo boost that other countries are a bit unsure about. For instance, the European Commission, which is a big deal in the European Union, decided to take a closer look at these subsidies last September. They're investigating to see if everything's on the up and up. Over in the US, they're rolling up their sleeves to pump up their own EV game with something called the Inflation Reduction Act. The goal? To rev up America's EV production and keep strong competitors, particularly from China, in check. These moves, like the EU's investigation and the US's act, are kind of like hurdles on the track, trying to slow down China's EV express train in these markets. But BYD, they're not just sitting back. They're getting proactive, tackling these challenges head on. The investment in Hungary for an EV plant is a big statement. It's BYD's way of showing they're serious about being a global player and not just a powerhouse back home in China. It's like they're saying, we're here to stay and we're playing by the rules. Lastly, experts are betting that BYD hasn't even shown us its full strength yet. For a long time, the big car companies kind of shrugged off BYD, not really seeing them as a threat. Sounds familiar? That's because Tesla was in the same boat back in the day. People didn't take them seriously either. But look at them now. Now, looking over at Tesla's corner, they're bracing for a tougher fight ahead. The year 2024 is looking like it's going to be a real test. With Chinese car makers, including BYD, rolling out more models, and the traditional car giants finally getting their act together in the EV space, Tesla's got its work cut out, and there's no big, flashy new Tesla model on the horizon that's expected to shake up sales like crazy. But BYD, they're hitting the accelerator hard. They're not just focusing on China. They're eyeing bigger slices of the pie in Europe and other parts of the world. Even Elon Musk himself admitted that he might have underestimated BYD. This tussle between Tesla and BYD isn't just about who's selling more cars right now. It's a glimpse into the future of how we get around, the technology that powers our rides, and the visionaries who dare to dream big and challenge the status quo. BYD's story is still unfolding, with lots of chapters yet to be written, and Tesla is gearing up to face the heat from newcomers and old-school rivals alike. And we will have to see that in the coming time.